I have a message for you from Archangel Michael. He says that we have two choices. We can either evolve or fight. He says that fear will make you want to fight, and love will motivate you to evolve. He says this will not be an easy choice because chaos creates fear, and fear always creates fight or flight. And right now, we are all enduring the chaos of a civilization in collapse. So he asked me to cover a few things that he shared with me and to put it in my own words. So here's my understanding of what he said, and I have to say it makes complete sense to me. So let me start by talking about where we are, and then we can talk about an amazing thing that we can keep in mind that maybe we've never thought of before, that might just be our way out. Now, civilizations have always collapsed on this planet for one reason or another. However, in the past, those collapses were local in nature. But now, for the first time ever, we are experiencing a civilizational collapse on a planetary level. That's because for the first time ever, technology has made this possible. And that's how we know that the motives behind the development of this technology were not exactly benevolent. See, if the motivation were benevolent, then this technology would have uplifted and advanced our species. Instead, it's being used as a vehicle to tear it down. Now, we were sold a real bill of goods about the internet and social media. We were told how awesome this would all be because it would connect people all over the world. But the thing we failed to notice was this: connect people for what purpose? Now, as an aside, let me share with you something that I learned when first beginning to channel. And some of you probably already know this. And I want to share this with you so that I can draw a certain comparison. There are entities out there who are always on the lookout for some unwitting human that they can either possess or control. But see, if they were upfront about their motives, they would never be allowed to do such a thing to the person that they targeted. See, in that case, if they were going to be upfront, they'd have to go up to that person and say, "Hi there, my name is Evil Demon, and I would like to control you and your life. What do you say? Do we have a deal?" Of course, the answer would be no. And they know that. So they have no problem lying and masquerading as a good spiritual entity who wants to help you. See, they know all the right words and all the right New Age cliches to gain trust from this unwitting human. And once they gain that person's trust, then little by little they begin to exert control under the guise of advice that soon morphs into specific instructions and direct demands. And the next thing you know, this person finds themselves unable to get out of this very controlling relationship with whatever this thing is. Now, weirdly enough, the internet and social media kind of were presented to us in a very similar way. The controllers sold us on a lie about why these things were invented. They said things like, "Oh, you'll love the internet. You can make friends and see people from all over the world. You'll be able to shop online right from the comfort of your home. You can learn about all kinds of things that you otherwise might not know about. And social media will be even better. Think of all of the hundreds or thousands of new friends you'll have. I'll bet you couldn't pull that off in the physical world." And we all said, "Gee, that sounds good. Let's buy it." Because we do not have our natural human values intact. And if you don't know what you value, you don't know what decisions to make, and you certainly don't know what questions to ask. Like, for example, maybe we should have asked a question, and what is your end game with this thing you call the internet and social media? Maybe we should have asked that question. If we'd had our natural human values intact, we might have thought to ourselves, you guys have never done anything but enslave us and keep us poor and struggling. How come all of a sudden you're acting like you're doing this for the good of humanity, huh? Like, what's up with you guys? But in any case, we took the bait about the internet and social media because on the surface, it sounded pretty good. And then at the beginning, they let us do whatever we wanted there because they needed the whole world invested in this so they would be able to capture all of the people and systems on Earth. And meanwhile, we were just busy having a grand old time, weren't we? Now, let me just say that they could have created a technology that would have given us all of these wonderful benefits, whatever the positive parts of the internet might be. And it would have evolved very differently than it's evolving now. It would have been something that was aligned with nature, with the planet, with us, and did no harm to anyone, anywhere, at any time. But that's not what happened. And we never bothered to even ask any questions. We just went along unconsciously. And while we were having so much fun with this stuff, the controllers were busy, very, very busy, putting every single system that matters online and connected to the internet. For example, do we really need our refrigerator to tell us when we're out of something? Do we really need our refrigerator to order food for us from the store? You see my point? It gets to the point where it's like completely ridiculous. Anyway, at some point, they decided to make things even more fun for us, and they gave us smartphones. That was so they could make sure that the internet was attached to our bodies at all times. And we were all just thinking how nice it was that they were making everything so convenient. Then once they got us all hooked into all of this stuff with nowhere else to go, they closed the gate. They began by closing the gates to our minds using censorship. And now, because all communication happens online, they can control what we say, control what we see, and thus control what we think. See, they need to control what we think so they can corral us into the next phase of our entrapment. Let's take a look at how easy this is for them now. Look at what happened in 2020 with the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything that went along with that. Now, ask yourself this question. Do you think this kind of worldwide coordinated lockdown would have been possible without the internet and social media? I don't think so. Notice that in 2020, we were told in no uncertain terms that we were all required to be thinking the same thoughts. Now, thoughts are the birthplace of speech, and emotion is the birthplace of action. So if they could get us all to be thinking the same negative thoughts, they could get us all in the same emotional space of fear, and then they could get us all to perform the required fear-based actions. And it worked like a charm. And aside from a few late-to-the-party protesters, the entire planet of humanity obeyed. That's because we were caught by surprise and still thinking that the internet was invented for the good of humanity. So this scene is working exactly like the example I gave you of the demon entities who try to hijack a person's life and consciousness. It all starts with the good stuff and then degrades into a mixture of good and bad. And finally, when the person is fully trapped, it turns to all bad. Right now, we are in the phase of what I would call a mixture of good and bad when it comes to the internet and social media. Yes, there is some good, but we are also seeing an increasing amount of bad. That's because the controllers plan to use all of this to lock us into their truly disgusting dystopia of total absolute control. So, we need to hold on to whatever good is there and use it to our advantage. We can't keep sitting around unconsciously like a bunch of sitting ducks. It's kind of like humanity is on this big technological ship that is headed into a very dark place. At this point, we can't really, as a collective, get off this ship. Our entire civilization is locked into it now on every single level. But what we can do is to try and turn this ship around. We can use our consciousness and our energy to steer it in a different direction. Our personal and collective evolution is what will change the course of this massive negative undertaking by these controllers. However, I have to tell you that we could be in the process of blowing it again. Because as you all know, ChatGPT came waltzing in just like the smartphone. And everybody was like, wow, this is amazing. Look at what these controllers have invented for us now. Look at this cool new thing they're giving us. So we can get out of work and even get out of actual thinking. Yes, sirree, these bad controllers are always looking out for our welfare. They want to take all of that thinking and creative pressure off of our shoulders. What a relief. It's so cool that they're giving us all of these fun new AI friends to keep us company after they wrecked our human relationships during the pandemic. They must be trying to make amends. And you know what else they have done that is so nice of them? Why, they knew that this boy-girl thing was so problematic for all of us. I mean, who needs all of that relationship bother, right? You know, men and women? What a pain. So they took that burden off of our shoulders too, by telling us that that whole thing was just a joke. Being a boy or a girl was just a big joke designed to stress us all out. I mean, what kind of choice is that? It's just not fair. No, the truth is that these controllers have always wanted us to live on Easy Street. So they told us that we can be anything at all because boys and girls don't actually exist. That was all just some secret guessing game that doctors invented because they were so bored just delivering all of those human babies. Oh, and here's a secret that was let out by a very brave hospital whistleblower. She said that for years and years, all the nurses were collecting coins that dropped under the delivery tables when the doctors were flipping coins because they had no idea what this human thing was that had just come out of this birthing person. And since a coin only has two sides, there could only be two choices, right? This is the secret of how the myth of girls and boys actually got started. It was all because of the coins. So yeah, it turns out that all of this time, we thought that boys and girls were a real thing. In reality, it was just another one of those urban legends. Kind of like the legend of the poodle in the microwave. Did you hear about that? The legend was that there was this lady who gave her poodle a bath, and she wanted to dry the dog off really fast, so she stuck it in the microwave, and the dog blew up or something weird like that. And that legend got passed around for decades before it finally died because it wasn't true, just like boys and girls, see? So isn't it great that the controllers have finally let the secret out? No more boys and girls to fuss with. Just a bunch of letters and numbers, and you get to pick whichever one you want to be. And you can even change the letters and numbers around. If you get tired of one combination, you can just switch to another. So much fun. And don't forget to chop off a few body parts if they get in your way. I mean, we have plenty of other body parts. We're not going to miss a few. There's plenty more body parts where those came from. Now, in all seriousness, this is the kind of stuff that we have to wade through and make some major decisions for ourselves. If you put together everything I've said so far, can you see how the walls could be closing in on us very fast if we don't wake up and evolve quickly? Now, Archangel Michael said that we can either fight or evolve. Fighting will yield some kind of result. And maybe for some people, that is their calling. So I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about those of us who want to choose the higher path of evolution. How do we evolve in the midst of so much chaos and insanity? How do we evolve in the midst of so much stress and so much lying and war and violence? That's a lot to fight against. And let's not forget that the controllers are masters of screwing things up and making it worse for everyone, including themselves. So it's kind of a mess. Now, Archangel Michael says that we will either come into our power or maybe we won't. And at this point, that will be primarily up to the individual. Now, here's the interesting thing. Believe it or not, evolving will be much more challenging than fighting. But the good thing is that evolving puts you on a good path that the universe can support. See, fighting is something you can do just as you are today. You don't really have to change as a being. And then there's always the risk of losing. In that case, you end up with nothing, right? But if you choose the path of evolution, you have only to gain. Now, evolution is much more challenging because it means a total transformation of who we think we are on this planet. You know, I always have this feeling that we have a power within us that is so close. It's like we live right on the edge of this power, but we never really step over the line. And stepping over the line would be huge because it would mean that everything we have come to believe about ourselves on this planet would be wrong. I mean, everything. It would be the biggest identity crisis ever. And it would absolutely be an existential threat to our ego. It's almost like you can feel it through a veil, a very thin veil. Now, I'm not talking about the famous veil that people say separates life from death. I'm talking about something vastly different from that. It's a veil that separates truth from illusion. Now, I don't mean that planet Earth and all life on it is an illusion. What I mean is that who we think we are and what we believe ourselves to be is an illusion. I think it's the greatest illusion of all time. And it's the sole reason that we find ourselves in the mess we're in. It's the reason we find ourselves living like victims of a bunch of stupid entities who can't do a single solitary thing on their own. Let me share a little story with you about a brief conversation that I had with Archangel Michael some years ago. I don't remember what we were talking about, but at one point he said to me, "Why would you be any different here than you are in the rest of the universe?" Now, that was back in the early days when I had recently walked in and I didn't fully understand the nature of where I had found myself. So when he said that to me, when he asked me that question, here's what I thought. I thought that he didn't fully understand the situation because he wasn't here and I was. So my answer to his question was, well, things are different here. That's why. Or some such foolishness. Now, it has actually taken me years to figure out how ridiculous my perspective was back then. And of course, at the time, he didn't say anything back to me. He just lovingly let me have my stubborn perspective. See, Archangel Michael has a way of saying these single sentences that have so much power, and there is so much contained in just his very few words. And that single sentence will stay with you for years and years like a light that's just waiting for you to see it. You know, see the light. See, unlike us, Archangel Michael doesn't need to argue his point. He simply delivers a truth and then lets you be with that truth and ponder it for however long you wish. So now I do see the light. I see that the light that emanated from his statement, from his question, which really was like a statement because it came across that way, that statement, the light of that statement is right behind this veil that I was talking about. See, we humans on this planet, we have been playing on the wrong side of this veil for eons and eons of time. And at the moment, it kind of looks like as a collective, we are hell-bent on continuing with that mistake. Now, the veil I'm talking about does not represent one side of duality. It's more like duality is on one side of the veil and oneness is on the other side. So, as we evolve out of duality, we will find the veil that separates us from truth beginning to dissolve. What is the veil made of? I think it is partly a veil of unconsciousness, but I also think it's a veil of belief. Now, I just want to say again, I'm not talking about the veil, the famous veil between life and death. See, the whole thing about life and death is on the side of the veil I'm talking about that is duality. Life and death is duality. I'm talking about the veil between duality and oneness. Now, on the duality side of the veil, there are all these different levels and dimensions of unconsciousness. And then on the side of the veil where the truth of oneness exists, there is a completely different experience of life. It's where we come into full oneness with ourselves and our creatorship in this universe. It's the place where we, as human beings, become a true asset in the rest of the cosmos. Right now, across this universe, human beings are living all kinds of adventures and trying to find their way out of this dualistic illusion. Now, the funny thing is that the truth of who we are and what lies beyond the veil exists right inside of us right now. It's not out in space somewhere. But in order to encounter that truth experientially, we will have to give up every single limited notion about ourselves. We will have to let go of fear as being the main driving force in our lives. And fear is sustenance for the ego. Fear is the food that sustains our false identity. So we harbor beliefs that cause us all kinds of pain. Yet the funny thing is that we are terrified to let go of those beliefs and the suffering that they cause. Why we're so terrified? I don't know. I think we are so incredibly brainwashed by our egos that we will choose fear over love every single time. I think that we are so identified with our egos that we actually believe that fear sustains us too. So yes, evolving will be the most challenging thing we have ever undertaken. And that is Archangel Michael's message that he wanted me to convey to you today. And I think it's best to ponder that message by going very deep within, because the decision that we are faced with will determine our destiny for a very long time. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it intriguing, please give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you think would like to view our situation from a much higher level of consciousness. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I am here on Tuesdays with all new videos. And with that, I'm sending you so much love, light, and high vibrational energy. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Namaste.